I drink lean, lean, lean. It's not embarrassing. It's the Going Off podcast with Rap Critic and Muse. We are joined today by Open Mike Eagle. Open Mike, yo, tell the people how you doing, man. Tell them what's up.
Oh, what's up? Currently there are city workers apparently up in trees outside my window. Today they've decided it's the day for tree trimming. Happens to be the day that we have decided to do this podcast. So, welcome to my world. This is called Total Immersion.
Do you host your own podcast? I remember seeing that a while back.
I used to have I can't say I used to. It's on hiatus, and I'm bringing it back soon. My personal podcast, which is called Secret Skin, and that's an interview show. But I also do a wrestling podcast, in which I am one of the 3 hosts of, called Tyson Fights. Nice. Is that it right now? And I'm like in talks to do a couple more. And I used to have an Adventure Time podcast called Conversation Parade.
I was gonna actually ask you because I was butting heads on like the first thing to bring up, but since you had said it, I was gonna ask you, is your name Open Mike Eagle a play on Iron Mike Sharp?
No, it is not.
Okay.
You know what's really a trip about that is how often people accidentally call me Iron Mike Eagle.
Really?
And like it's so aggravating.
Well, I wonder if it's because Iron Mike Sharp, or if they got that like Nazi thing in the back of the head of like the Iron Eagle. I'd like to think they're thinking WWE enhancement talent from the late 80s, early 90s, and not Nazis, but you never can tell these days.
I think it actually is mostly to do with Mike Tyson, actually.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
That's the reason that it happens most, but it's just baffling to me because I've never said that, but that happens to me all the time.
Well, on your latest album, you have what's the name of the song? The legendary Iron Hood, and then that started messing with my head because I was literally about to open up by saying, "Yeah, we got Iron Mike or Iron Hood." Fuck, man, what's your name?
You know what? It's funny. I didn't even realize that I've accidentally now associated the word iron with my name. I've done it to myself.
You played yourself. There you go.
I did. I actually did.
So the other thing I was torn about bringing up first was how I actually discovered.
What you're telling me is you're bringing up 3 different things first. How's that even possible? We got to be on second or third now.
This is the first thing, yeah.
I see.
The first time I'd ever heard of Open Mike Eagle was a video that Vox posted a long time ago that was talking about you being a fan of They Might Be Giants, which isn't something you typically associate with hip-hop artists, are weird, nerdy, art rock, sort of experimental, electro kind of bands from the early 80s, but I thought that was super cool.
Late 80s.
There was even a track, God, I forget which exact track it was, but I remember you even sampled a They Might Be Giants song, and I thought that was so fucking cool, and I marked out pretty hard. So I definitely wanted to bring that up.
That's my jam, man. Those guys, like, that's like my favorite music in the world, is their stuff. It's just how unique it is, how authentic they are to their own voices, how they never try to, like, sound like anybody else. I mean, they just are who they are, and their music reflects their own values and interests, and it's just the most, like, I don't know, it's everything I want out of music. It's everything I really want out of entertainment, honestly. And it also just happens to be like tunes and stuff that I really enjoy.
I think I saw that you'd posted like a top favorite songs of theirs or whatever, and I might be remembering this wrong, but I seem to remember them being mostly older songs. Do you lean more towards preferring the older albums than the newer ones?
I think the older albums are more impactful on me. But just about every album they put out, there's something in it I like.
Yeah, I like how they don't really. No album feels like, oh boy, here's them trying to do the because this is what's cool right now. Every album feels like, nah, this is just what we felt like, and that's awesome. It's like that honesty and the integrity in music that I appreciate so much.
Yeah, man. And honestly, like, there's nothing more inspiring in the world to me that, like, they went platinum once. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, on paper, that just doesn't make sense. And I don't know, I like to draw a lot of inspiration from that. Like, you just never know what could work culturally, even if it doesn't work on paper.
That is true, weird. Yeah.
Okay, so for me, I didn't get into them as much. So when I heard about them, like, I thought they were strictly like a children's band. Like, cause they did that Here Come the ABCs album, and they did the Courage the Cowardly Dog song for the Cartoon Network soundtrack. So I thought it was like, oh, okay, it is like a kids group. I didn't know they were like legit alternative rock, like from freaking the 80s. Like, I had no idea.
The way that I thought that they were kind of leaning more towards kids was the first time I'd ever heard of them was on Tiny Toons.
Yeah, that was the second time I'd ever heard them. But yeah, that is part of what really did it for me, with hearing them on Tiny Toons and really loving, especially Particle Man, like loving that song.
How were you exposed to them before Tiny Toons?
I had heard MTV. They had a video for a song for Birdhouse in Your Soul. And that was the first thing I saw from them. And I fell in love with that instantly. And then didn't even put together for a while that was the same band that was doing Particle in Istanbul on Tiny Toons.
Yeah, I'm not even trying to make this the They Might Be Giants podcast or make this the whole thing, but I had the
on is the They Might Be Giants podcast.
Dude, make it a thing. The first time I had seen them was in Charlotte, and they were performing their whole set or whatever. But when they got to Birdhouse, you saw couples that were like in their 60s and 70s jumping out of their seats and dancing, and it was like such a moving experience that like this song, like their one big hit resonates with these people of all different ages, and it's like, God, this is like something magical I'm witnessing right now.
This song is magical. I mean, and there's actually like, and I had somebody explain this to me before, but there's like things that song does in terms of like key changes and chord progressions. It's like really crazy stuff. And I feel like on some level that's kind of what's cutting through. Is like this is not a normal song. Like there's some like weird music magic to it.
We should probably start talking about your music now.
A little less fun, but I'm here for it.
Like I'm just thinking, I was like, man, people are gonna be like, well, what the fuck? I wanted to hear him talk about it. Dude, what if one day we got They Might Be Giants on here, and then we found out that they were huge fans of Open Mike Eagle, and then we just ended up talking about his music, like.
I do know those guys though, and they have listened to me.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
Didn't they? Didn't someone do the guitar on the first song?
Dan Miller from They Might Be Giants. He's not one of the Johns, so he doesn't write the songs, but he's their guitarist.
Oh wow.
He played on Iron Hood.
That is so cool. I had no idea about that. That's awesome.
And speaking of which, so that was the first song, right? Yeah. So I wanted to talk about that song. So this album is, and I was reading up about it, like, cause I like listening to an album and then like afterwards, reading up about, what the process that someone was going through, right? Cause it's always cool to see like, like if you go to if you go to an art gallery or whatever, you look at the picture first and then you read the little thing that's next to it to be like, yeah, like, did I get this right? Like, did I know what the fuck was going on? So this album was about your, it was like oh my goodness, the Taylor homes that you grew up in Chicago.
Yeah, I didn't grow up there, just by the way, but I did spend a lot of time there because my aunt and first cousins and stuff all lived there. So I was there a lot, but I didn't grow up there. I grew up about a mile away from there.
All right. So, and the idea was that this place had been demolished and there was just nothing that was built there. And all those people were just sort of displaced.
Yep.
And you said that you came up with this on like a random plane trip somewhere. And you just randomly was like, hey, wait a minute. What happened to that place?
Yeah, because it got demolished while I was away in college. Mm-hmm. So, like, it wasn't something that I had really thought through. And on that plane ride, it occurred to me to like see what was on that land now, and that's when I learned that like it hadn't gotten redeveloped.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that inspired this album.
Yeah, like that kind of pulled up some feelings in me that I felt like I needed to explore.
Okay, now can I ask you a question? And maybe I'm reading too deep into this, or maybe this is a slick thing that you did, and I noticed it. The first song, which one was it?
95 Radio.
Was it released on September 11th?
You know what? That might have been, because that was released the Monday the album came out, and the album came out on the 15th. So yeah, that did come out on the 11th.
Yeah, I was thinking that maybe there was some sort of like subtle correlation that you were trying to do there between this place being destroyed and all of that culture being wiped out, and like, 9/11, these buildings being destroyed by terrorists.
No, that is called a happy, terrible accident.
All right. God damn it. I thought I was going to be like, oh man, all right, now we're going to like explore the idea of like terror. What is terror in like, different facets? But no, that was just an accident. All right, fuck it.
See, you know what though? But like that type of thing is why I love kind of leaving a lot of stuff open to interpretation. I love like having the room for a listener to kind of put something together like that. Because whether it's intended or not, I'm certainly for that. You know what I mean? Like I'm certainly all about that correlation. I just didn't do it on purpose in that sense. You know what I mean?
you got to claim it. You got to be like, oh yeah, I mean, if you want to interpret it that way, it's one way,
Might have to adjust my policy on lying.
So, now there's a character called Iron Mike, Iron Hood. And he is who is this character? Is he the Taylor Holmes Projects, or is he you? Like, what's the process through which you're sort of like creating this character?
Iron Hood is like, he begins as like the fantasy of a kid in the projects. It's kind of like going through living in that area and just doesn't know how to cope with a lot. So like, he starts to imagine what his superpowers would be, and creates this kind of like identity for himself. And the question then becomes, in the world of this album, does this entity really have any sort of power or not? Because right. In some sense, the power is just the power to get through things. But then is that even a power at all, or is he just kind of becoming a sociopath? You know what I mean?
Oh man, that's just sad now. I was thinking like, yeah, the power to get through this, and he's gonna come through. He's like Bobby Digital, he's coming through to save the hood. You know what I mean? And it's like, no, it's completely metaphorical. It's just really sad.
Once again, though, and this was on purpose, that one is open to interpretation. Just like if you've seen the video for Brick Body Complex.
Oh yes.
So that the character Iron Hood is in that video, and you see him like, trying to save the building. You see him like, trying to stop this gentrification and the changing of the neighborhood. But the question you're left with at the end is, was this enemy that he was fighting real, or was it just, something that a delusional kind of post-traumatic mind kind of dreamt up? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just about to ask you about that, but yeah. So this character, the hooded person destroying the neighborhood, like, and rubbing green stuff on himself, that was kind of weird. Like, who is that supposed to like be? Who does that like represent?
It represents like the forces of capitalism, pretty much. You know, like real estate magnates, public policy, all of that kind of faceless by committee stuff that just happens to people, and it happens as like the people who make those decisions just aren't, they're concerned about the ideas and the concepts. They're not concerned with the people involved in the decisions they make.
Because what's crazy about this event that this is based off of is that, you know, usually like Robert Moses, guys like that, like they destroy neighborhoods in order to like, oh, well, it can't get in the way of progress. Da, da, da. This was just like, oh, we just destroyed it. And, that was it. Fuck them. Like, you know, it's just, there's some.
A big part of it was that Chicago around that time was really trying really hard to get this Olympic bid.
Oh.
And so they were just, you know, they were taking away things that the city considered eyesores. It's weird because it represents the other side of the same coin that caused the projects to be built in the first place, right? Because like this is a city deciding, okay, its residents deserve, you know, its poor residents deserve better housing because they were designed to be like these modern, nice buildings that people were excited to move into. You know, then it went to shit. But you know, but the other side of that coin is that when the city decides they're going to go away, they just go away.
Yeah. So, can I ask you, what is the point of the album title? Like, what's the significance of that in relation to the topic?
Well, because I think, you know, in that environment, especially if you're like a young person, with the dangers there, with a lot of what would go on in those places, I think that there is a hardening that takes place, first of all. And that's kind of what I was speaking to with the creation of Iron Hood, and whether or not like this is really some kind of power, or if he's just kind of losing a connection to his actual emotions. And I think that's a hardening. And the other thing is this, you know, when we were talking about the villain in that video, there's a certain apathy that you have to have towards the people who live in those buildings to kind of make the decisions they made about them. Like displacing them, relocating them without any like any real thought to whether or not there was any problem with like gang affiliations. They lost track of a third of the residents. Like there's just 33% of people who lived in that system are just still to this day unaccounted for. You know what I mean?
That's crazy.
It's crazy, right? And I think that like for that to go that way, there's a certain apathy that people have to have, and I think it's similar to the apathy that takes place in a lot of senses when, like, you know, when there's incidents of police violence against Black Americans, and there's a lot of people whose first thought is like, okay, but what did that person do? Why did they listen? Like there's no connection to like a family having lost a family member for and I think like, and so what I wanted to do too was draw a correlation between like the apathy for these buildings and the apathy for like Black bodies in a lot of senses in America.
Right.
That's where the title comes from.
You have a song called Hymnal, and there's a lyric in there where you bring up, like, you know, when you're like listening to someone and you realize like they're doing something, and I was like, you said Chili Pepper, and then you said I ain't got mama's gun, and I was like, wait, what? Why is he bringing up these artists and songs? Is there like, because I couldn't figure out what the correlation was supposed to be. Like, wait, Chili Peppers, then Erykah Badu, and then All for One. Wait a minute.
All of that was me finding different ways to say that, like, I am kind of like alone in my mission. You know what I mean? And in that sense, a lot of it was like my mission as an artist. I don't feel like I belong to anything. You know what I mean? And so it's weird because the song is kind of like this almost spiritual kind of call to arms kind of thing. But as the leader or whatever, as the representative of whatever it is that I'm trying to represent, I'm like reminding people that I don't have support. I don't have a community. I'm kind of like standing alone in my viewpoints. And somehow, but somehow I'm not expecting, but like I feel like some people are going to follow. It's a weird song.
I want to ask before we move on from Hymnal that it seems like on the last three albums there's always a feature on there that I'm always super excited to see. On a dark comedy, there was a track with Hannibal Buress, which I got to go back and ask about again in a second. On Hella Personal Film Festival, which was I just got to say one of my favorite albums of last year. I listened to that album so damn many times. It's awesome from beginning to end. And with A$AP Rock on that album, and with here, Samus, who we've had on the show before. God, I wish we had her on under better circumstances, because we had her on the show like the week of the presidential election. And it was such a sad, downer kind of like mood. We still tried to talk about cool shit because her new album had just come out, and we were trying to talk about like we talked about Nicktoons, and we tried to keep it light, but then at the same time it's like, oh boy, just a couple days ago, like that shit happened. But how did that friendship, that collaboration start?
We met through Mega Ran, well, I'm sure you.
Okay.
Ha.
We talked to Samus. Me and Mega Ran were on tour, and we were on a tour where like I was booking half the shows and he was booking the other half. So like I was booking us dirty underground rap shows and he was booking us dirty underground nerdcore shows. We had a show in Ithaca that Samus helped put together. So it was my first time meeting her, and just blown away, man. Even in her, she was a lot less, developed as a MC and performer then. That had to be like 5 years ago. But you could already see it, you know what I mean? Like you could already see like, oh no, this is like a special talent here. And then, like I try to, I don't know, I guess I don't try to do this, but I end up in a position a lot where like, black artists in this indie stuff that kind of come halfway from the DIY world with something to say, a lot of them end up looking to me for like advice on how to like put together a career in this. Mm-hmm. And so we've always talked a lot that way too, with me trying to like give her whatever wisdom I could on how to kind of put it all together career wise. And I'm still, of course, still learning too. But we communicate a lot about that kind of stuff, like best practices.
Yeah, I it's been weird because we've been off for a period of 3 weeks, and in that time, we've noticed Cardi B going to number 1. I think Darren and I both discovered, is it pronounced cupcake or cupcake? How do you pronounce that?
I think it's just cupcake.
Okay, cupcake. I wasn't sure if that was a play on words or not.
Like bukkake. I didn't even think about that.
I wasn't sure. But yeah, it's just amazing how, and now we got Samus is like you said 5 years ago, like had the opportunities, had the room to grow. Now being named like a title rising star. Like, I know Darren had posted this on Twitter that we're starting to kind of see the female rapper resurgence, at least in the eye of the public. Not to say that they weren't always there, but just kind of being noticed more, I guess.
It's hard for me to say, man. But the biggest reason it's hard for me to say is that like I've never heard the big Cardi B song. You know what I mean? I'm just like out of the loop in terms of like a lot of the public consumption of rap music. So it's really difficult for me to know like what's happening in a moment of time. It's not like in the indies.
So you just really sort of stick to your stuff, right?
I just listen to what appeals to me and like what I feel like is going to speak to my values or make some sense for my life. And typically, just a lot of the commercial stuff, where it's not that I think it's bad, because I see the value, and especially at this time in rap history, there's never been another time where like it's been like things have to be high quality now. I used to be able to be like really terrible, thrown together stuff that was the best stuff. I mean, like the most prominent stuff in the mainstream. But now, like, no, like these beats are difficult to make, and these are high quality recordings with artists that are really, typically skilled in recording rap music that are at these top positions. It's just a lot of times it's just not music that resonates with me a lot, so I don't necessarily seek it out, and honestly, a lot of times I avoid it. And so, in that sense, it's kind of hard for me to know what's going on that level.
You've also been on tour for a minute, though, also, right?
Yeah. Like, since the album came out.
And so there's that, and also, I think we'd be remiss to not mention the Comedy Central show.
Yeah.
What can you go into about that? Because honestly, we had a list at the end of 2016, the beginning of 2017, where we were talking about dream guests for the show. You were on the short list along with Representative Keith Ellison and Bernie Sanders. I think those might be a little bit out of range, possibly. But when I saw you had when I saw the news about the Comedy Central show, I was like, oh well. Now there's no way, because dude's got shit going on. But that's why I was so super excited, and I tried to keep my composure on Twitter and seem super professional. But when you wrote back and you were like, "Yeah, sure," I was marking out. I was losing my shit. So
it's a show that I co-host with Baron Vaughn. He's I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's a stand-up. He's an actor. He's on Grace and Frankie. He's one of the voices of the new Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Oh, he did Tom Servo.
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
So me and him host a live comedy show here in LA. It's like a stand-up showcase that we co-host. And Comedy Central has optioned that into a television show.
Oh, okay.
Cool, man.
Man, I'm just reading this headline, and it's such a small world here, because it also says they ordered a pilot with Aquafina, and we were just talking about that.
Oh shit!
There was a documentary that we were privy to see about Asian American rappers, and she was featured very prominently.
Yeah, my boy Dumbfound. I haven't seen it yet, but I know they tell like it's got a lot to do with him too.
I decided to go back through the. I was like, wait a minute. Let me go back to that old album and see if there was anything like I wanted to actually talk to him about, because it's like it's a pretty good moment right now. So I decided to check out Hella Personal Film Festival. That's the last one we reviewed, right?
Yes.
And oh goodness, you had admitting the endorphin addiction. For some reason, this is hard for me to say.
Me and my easy to say titles. That's all.
And you had the first song on here. Yeah, that was the first song. First of all, that was one of my favorite songs from last year. Yeah, and I don't know what it is. There's just something about like, okay, so your style is very sing-songy, and I find it kind of fascinating. It's like it reminds me, like when I first listened to it, I was just thinking like, this kind of reminds me of like, and this is so weird to say, but it's like if it's like smooth jazz from like the 40s was like transplanted to today, and like this is what it would sound like. And that was such a weird feeling for me to think, but like I was kind of feeling that. And then there's you say like rap music has ruined me. I always want to loop my favorite part. So this song, is it sampling something? What is it sampling?
It is sampling something, but I don't know what. Because Paul White did all the beats, and he's like a maniac. So
damn it! Because I was like, what is this?
I think it's like a Quincy Jones song or something. Whatever it is, I think I'm having to pay for it. So I ain't afraid to say what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, we noticed he goes a bit crazy with the sampling when we reviewed the Danny Brown album.
Mm-hmm.
And there was that really weird song that he sampled for the Ain't It Funny, that like almost scary. It was just like, we're like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
It was frightening. I really love the storytelling in Insecurity Part 2. That might be my favorite song on the album.
Yes.
If not that one, Smiling, it is really close, because I mean I could just go through all of these, they're all great, but just how in depth that song goes, yeah, it's just, oh man, like it's such a, it definitely it makes you feel a certain way of just like, oh god, like very rarely do songs make you uncomfortable, but in a way that you can tell it was intended.
Yeah, there's comfort all through that album, man. And when I think about it, yeah, man, that's a weird decision to make, to make your rap album uncomfortable on purpose. But hey, that's what I do, man.
What is the album cover like? What is that supposed to be? Yeah, what does that mean in relation to the, you know?
A lot of stuff on that album has to do with like social stuff and like dating and that, and you know, and the expectations people have of people, and that wasn't like a piece of art I had commissioned for the album. Like my guy Frohawk Two Feathers, he's like this world-renowned artist that I went to college with. He had that piece, and I just thought that it just captured something, you know what I mean? And it wasn't an easily definable thing that it captured, but just this feeling of like this social combat. The thing that I didn't really realize though until like way later was I actually thought that was a man and a woman sword fighting, but it was brought to my attention that was two women.
Oh. Yeah.
Which changed it, and maybe I wouldn't have picked that if I you know, hey, you do 3 months into it, you know?
Yeah.
I gotta go back. I'm sorry, go ahead.
What was the one song you brought up? Lena Dunham?
Oh yeah, what was that part about?
Yeah.
She had said something publicly about like having touched her little sister's
We thought
private.
that's what you meant, yeah.
Okay.
And I decided from that moment, like, I'm just never gonna like. It was like maybe the second or third time where like she was trending, and I looked at what it said, and it was something horrifying. I decided in that moment, I'm just not gonna do that anymore. And I wrote that lyric from there. There's never anything that's beneficial for me to read. It's always something crazy that makes me feel terrible. So.
Well, I'm sorry, I reminded you of that.
No. It's fine. Of not looking at what she says. So any excuse I have to tell people publicly not to go look up what she says, I'm into.
I was going to go back one more album to go back to something I'd mentioned before. How did you get teamed up with Hannibal Buress for the track on Dark Comedy? And was that a written verse, or was that something he just freestyled?
I think he wrote it. And I've known him since college, man. Wow. I was his RA in college when he started comedy. So like, yeah, I just known him for years, man. And you know, he's a comedian that loves rap music, man. And so when I was making a record, I hit him to see if he wanted to rap on it, and he did.
Now, who made the video? Because I specifically want to ask about the credits.
Tamara Wofford, who's mostly an AD that works in television, made that video. You know, me and her kind of put our heads together to make it. Like, she executed it, but it was kind of a vision me and her had.
For those of you who haven't seen the video, one may notice that the credits of the video, everyone credited is a character from Twin Peaks.
Uh-huh.
And I had to ask if you were a fan of the show or if that was somebody else.
No. Yeah, all that was me. A lot of that was it was Twin Peaks. It was Death Note. A lot of that stuff, because like at the time, me and Tamara both was really into those shows, and in our creation of that style of credits, we wanted to point to other stuff that we liked.
Did you watch season 3?
Of Twin Peaks? I haven't, because I don't have Showtime.
Oh, okay, then I won't say anything about it then. That's fair.
I hear it's, a lot of people don't like it.
It's amazing. Own personal opinion, it is, it exceeded expectations for me. I went in not expecting answers, so if there weren't answers or anything explained, I wouldn't have my hopes up for anything. It was just like, this is what Lynch wants to do, and I'm just gonna respect that. And you watch it, and it's like, it doesn't feel like the show at all. It feels more like the movie. But
okay, so it's like dark like that, like heavy.
It's very dark. It goes into a lot more of the kind of like the story behind everything, because it kind of takes on a whole new story, but revolving the same characters. It was one of the very few shows that I had followed week by week and was frustrated that I had to wait, and at the same time was sadder and sadder every week knowing that it was 1 week closer to being over.
I had another question about, because I'm just a person who always wants to talk about the lyrics. So you have a song called "A Short" about a guy that dies every night. I kind of wanted to ask, like, what inspired this? Like, to write a song?
That was a metaphor mostly about, like, police brutality. You know what I mean? And, like, you know, it kind of goes with the Smiling song. It's just kind of like this thread of Black American existence where you just have to face this constant stories of and thoughts of death by police officer or death by society that people that's not entirely unique to the Black American experience, but it's just something I wanted to write from.
Holy shit, I didn't get that at all. Oh my God. Wow. Now I'm looking at this completely different now. Holy shit. Okay. All right. Well, yeah. Everybody go check out that song. And
I got to bring it back because, you know, we have some mutual fandoms. There was a track early on that album where you made a Rick Martel reference, and at that point I was like, okay, obviously this is more than your average, because we've talked about this on the show before about how whenever rappers reference wrestlers, it's usually Hogan, Macho Man, or Ric Flair, but for a Rick the Model Martel reference, I was like, all right, this guy is either a fan or knows somebody that is a fan, because that's just deep enough that it definitely sparked my interest. Are you do you still follow it, or are you more of like a fan of the 80s stuff?
I do a wrestling podcast every week, so I'm watching Raw, SmackDown, or pay-per-view every week. Like, it is, like, that is my thing. Wrestling is my thing. I love it. I love professional wrestling. Like,
what do you think about them putting the Shield back together?
I enjoyed it on Raw last night. I mean, they've been telegraphing it for weeks now, so, like, didn't have the surprise factor I would like for that sort of thing. But I'm with it. I think it's great. I mean, I'll put it to you this way. It's not necessarily the way I would have preferred them to do it, but they've pulled the trigger on it, and it seems to be going well. And I think they're going to finally get Roman over as a face. You know what the problem is? The problem's going to be the music, because right now, like, we are Pavlovian trained to boo when we hear that music.
Oh yeah, the old Shield music, which he still uses now. Yeah.
I think when they hit that music yesterday, I think that they were hoping that people would look at it with a sense of nostalgia, but I don't know. That's going to be the problem, because their appearances are going to be defined by what happens when they come out.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And if they're coming out to that old music, they're going to have some more months of, like, some people booing just from hearing that music.
Yeah, whoever that group is, what is it, CFO $ or whatever, Jim Johnson, they're going to have to write something new for them. Get them some new merch, get them some new music, yeah, because, yeah.
So that weirded me out, too, yesterday, how they came out, like, later on in the show with new T-shirts on. That was kind of hilarious, like, that they got the cash grab shirt already.
Like, I don't want to make this a whole thing or whatever, but yeah, for me it personally felt like kind of regressive. Like, I'd much rather see them do big things on their own, but I mean, that's to say that Seth hasn't done big things on his own, and obviously he has. I just feel bad for Dean, because it feels like Dean was an experiment that didn't work the way they wanted, so it's like...
I agree with that completely, but see, that's the thing, is like, because that's true, it's great that he has this opportunity to get a second act. I mean,
true.
There's a long history of guys that if their big push experiment doesn't work, they get fired.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, do something that's, like, a lot less glamorous in terms of how they ride out the rest of their career. But the fact that he's got this thing that was amazingly over to go back to, it's almost like it hits the reset button on all of them. And I feel like with what they have done and the successes they have had as singles, whatever the next phase of that story is, I think all of those guys are going to be better off for it because we know who they are now.
And then there was like, I used to practice trying to talk like I was Mr. Bogus. I was like,
do you know who Mr. Bogus is?
I looked it up, and I don't, like, it's one of those cartoons that is like, I don't remember what that was, but a part of my brain is, like, lighting up like I should. Like, you know?
He was this little claymation type, little ugly yellow dude. And he was like he was yellow and he wore blue pants. And he was just this random cartoon character that had this voice. And I used to try to practice talking like him. And that's really the whole story.
There was no other thing behind that. It was just like, oh yeah.
I literally used to practice trying to talk like him. That was it. All it was.
Dude, you have no idea how much I appreciate those little personal touches like that mean nothing to anyone else except it's like, hey, this is something I did. I don't care if you know what it means. I felt like this needed to be in here. I love that type of shit. That's like, that gets a bigger smile out of me than any like witty like punchline or just something that feels like this was personal. I love the shit out of that. And I'm looking at this now. I recognize it a little. I certainly didn't watch it though. I think this might have been I don't know our age difference. I was just gonna say this might be a little bit before my time, but
it was, and I think a thing that culturally might have only lasted 2 years or something. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I think you know what it reminds me of? Like Bump in the Night. Y'all remember that one?
That sounds familiar.
Like hold on, let me find it. Because the animation, like that claymation part, I was like, wait, because it looks sort of like messed up, and you know what I'm trying to say. Wait, hold on, let me send it to you.
Yeah, I'm looking at a video of I think it's a full episode, but yeah, this looks about familiar. All that claymation shit seems to
so weird, and it always looks like it takes place in like, you know, a bedroom, a kid's bedroom that, you know, people forgot. Well, anyway, sorry, that's completely irrelevant. I don't know. It's one of those, like, I know it was during the 90s, but I can't place a year. Oh, look, 94 to 95, so, like, right in the middle of the 90s. Look at that. We were
spoiled with weirdness in the 90s. We had weirdness nobody could ever dream of, and some of it, I'm like, was that real?
Yeah, it really does feel like, it's like, did that happen? Was that a fever dream?
A lot of 90s was all gross out humor, too. I noticed, like Ren and Stimpy was very gross. Our Real Monsters was gross. Not so much Rocco, but it had its moments.
Yeah, it's his neighbors. They just look gross. Like
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, the big heads.
Yeah, there's frog people. Man, I feel so bad for people trying to create authentic original shit now, because I mean there's definitely enough out there, but it feels like a lot of it just kind of gets run through the same ringer of like, no, it's got to look like this, it has to feel like this, but then you look at Mr. Bumpy and be like, how did this get greenlit?
You know what, the thing about it was this, man, like in terms of entertainment, because you know, like it represented a time when there was just a lot more money in the economy. Like, if you were in the entertainment, you could afford to take a lot more risks in the 90s. Because, like, people were spending, like, $10 for a CD. You know what I mean? And so that meant you did your budget for the year. You had a few million you could use to market towards, like, niche things or, like, underground things. Or just take chances. Like, when that industry, and all of these industries, of course, have lost money with everything going digital, they just don't have that room anymore. They don't have room to, like, experiment. You know what I mean?
This week on the Going Off podcast, we are talking about Rose, Azura Njano by CunninLynguists, their first album in 6 years. Just came out on the 6th. We were watching it. Definitely wanted to hit on it as soon as it came out, and I myself was not disappointed by the album. I enjoyed it a good bit. I wanted your thoughts. I'm not really sure it's exactly, I mean this in the nicest possible way, that this album was, like, serviceable, you know, like, the rhymes were sufficient. I thought the songs were very well written. I like the beats, I like the subject matter, all of it was great. Don't really know if it has the re-listen factor, though. Like, I don't really know if I was blown away by it to the fact that it's an album I necessarily want to revisit. And I don't know if that's just, like, a personal preference of mine, because some of the albums I do tend to revisit tend to be some of the more lighter albums. Like we were just talking with Open Mike Eagle, some of his tracks are, you know, more fun and upbeat, and those tend to be the ones I go back to. Rav's album is one I listen to a lot. Aesop Rock and The Impossible Kid. I listen to these albums a lot, but they also tend to be very punchline heavy, very witty and stuff like that. This album reminded me a lot of the album we talked about, it's probably like 30 or something episodes ago by this point, but the Tribe Called Quest album, where it's very conscious of the social issues, it's very of its time, talking a lot about the racial injustice and all of that we knew was going to become an aspect in hip-hop. It was only natural. It's not surprising that within this current administration and the almost daily attacks on people of color and other minorities, that this is what you get. This is the type of response you get, is we got to stand up, we got to stick together, we got to fight, for just our way of life, who we are, to prove that, we are people, essentially, in some people's eyes. But with it being on such a more serious foot, I don't know if I would revisit it. I would still probably end up giving it like a 4.5 if we're gonna, spoiler alert. Like, it was a very solid album. I enjoyed it, but I just don't know about the re-listenability of it. Yourself?
I think you are a hater.
Oh,
I think you're mad because CunninLynguists stacks bitches to the ceiling, rides on money, and gets lots of 20-inch chrome. That's what I think about your opinion.
So a 4.5 is hating now. A 4.5 out of 5 is hating. Okay.
It's the way you put it. No, it's just the way you put it, though, because I enjoyed the absolute shit out of this album. And, like, yeah, I can feel how you feel about it just being solid, but I enjoyed, like, every minute of it. CunninLynguists kind of goes back for me, though. I used to listen to them in high school. I remember they were basically kind of like the underground outcast to me. They're like, this is hip hop that's really smart, maybe even smarter than Outkast, you know what I'm saying? Just like, I don't mean that like a contest, but it's just like, they just talked about more stuff, and, fun punchline. I mean, they were definitely goofier at the beginning, but this one is a lot more like starkly serious and a lot more focused. And I love that, like, here's these artists that I used to listen to. They were kind of fun, but they also had, lots of different topics and stuff. And now it's like, whoa, they grew the fuck up. And I love this music that they're playing. Like, Honey, that shit buzzed so fucking hard. Like, and that singer, I don't know who she was, but she just sounded like sex. Like, it's just like, Jesus. And what was it? Riot? So, like, this music really came off to me as like, this is like music at during the apocalypse, but like where you're sort of just like, it's far away and you see that it's coming towards you. And like, this is sort of like that music where it's just like, well, this is the last bit of calm I'm gonna have before I can't avoid this. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I remember you said something similar about the Gorillaz album. Well, even that was supposed to kind of be the premise of it was like a soundtrack to the apocalypse is what they were going for. Long before they even knew that, Trump was going to be elected president. They were just kind of looking forward to the future, and that's what it came out as. I really agree strongly in that Riot, phenomenal song. Honey is a great song. I think it started great and ended a little weak, and I mean only a little weak by the fact I'm talking specifically about Earth to Venus.
Yeah.
Is kind of a weak way to end the album. Well, I was kind of like, actually, that was the last track? I kind of wouldn't have guessed that, but okay.
The No Universe Without Harmony was weird, just because, like, the way that guy was talking.
Yeah.
No universe without harmony. Like, where is this guy from?
Yeah, I think it was a lot more focused in the beginning. Might have lost it a little bit towards the end, but,
You know what it was? It was front-loaded with the sort of the messages, and then I noticed as the album went on, it was very focused towards women. Like,
yeah.
Every song, it felt like, was about a woman. And so you had, like, the one song that was about Red Bird, the song about, like, this mom watching her daughter sleep, and this black child's gonna be a part of the next generation to change the world, you know what I'm saying? And then you have which was it? Oh, Anyway the Wind Blows, about the girl trying to be like a video model, but, the rappers just see her as like a whore to have sex with, so she's just like, well, I don't want to fuck with this. And then you kind of have it go on where it's like, she feels like she's never gonna be respected, so she's like, it doesn't really make it clear if she's committing suicide, but they use the word suicidal a lot. And, but then you see the next song of her, like, performing and, doing her thing and, like, just, like, getting respect and doing what she wants. It was just, like, it's fascinating. It's like, there's, like, a mini story arc going on in here with this woman, and it's so strange, like, because none of the songs are about, like, a boy who, like, grows up into this. They're always specifically about women, and I was like, I wonder why that is. Like, what's going on here? And
well, I mean, the album cover is a picture of a woman, and maybe that's just the overall theme. Maybe it is about a specific person.
Yeah, I mean, it is literally the name. It is literally the name of a woman. Maybe if we look it up, like, there's just a woman with that name, it's just like, oh no, this is literally, like, the autobiography of, like, this woman. She actually wrote this whole album, and, like,
if we're looking at the, the name Rose, and you got Red Bird,
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
it's, maybe it's a concept album and we just didn't know. I don't know how to find this out. This album is on Bandcamp right now, and it doesn't really give you much information.
No, it does not. I was trying to find interviews or anything that could help expand the meaning of this album. There's even, like, one of the verses is not on, like, Rap Genius. Like,
what? Just skips it?
Yeah, the second verse of the No Universe Without Harmony, it's just not there.
That's an odd choice.
So I'm just like, who was writing this and just got bored here? Like,
it's not even the last track, jeez.
Yeah, exactly.
Stick with it a little bit more.
Yeah, so yeah, there seems to be very limited information about this, and it's just like, does no one want to know, like, why this album is specifically named this? And it was like, it got me thinking, like, Rose, okay, so there's Red Bird, and Azura, there's, what's, like, Violet, right? No, never mind. I was about to say, like, Njano, maybe that means bird or something? I don't fucking know. But anyway, yeah, I thought this was very enjoyable. I love just listening. I don't know, there's something interesting about just, like, people talking about, what was it that I wrote here? It's like, it's about this badass chick who owns her life and sexuality, but it's dope how it's so, like, low-key progressive in a way. Like, a lot of songs that would be about, a guy's writing about women, in order to avoid the, oh, she's a hoe thing, they would be like, nah, she doesn't mess with guys at all. But it's like, no, she does. Like, there's parts where she's like, you know, she needs relief from something, so she messes with this guy and da-da-da-da. But it's never framed as like, oh, hang your head in shame that she would give up her body for... No, it's actually just like... in fact, they have points where she's like, you know, her red bottoms are... Her bottoms are stained with the blood of these fuckboys whose emotion she keeps crushing. You know what I'm saying? And it's like the end of the verse, we're just like, bro, just let her be. Don't try to kick game if you can't do it. You know what I mean? Like,
I looked this up, by the way. It basically is red, blue, yellow. Njano is yellow in Swahili, and Azura is blue.
Some language, damn it!
So they are all colors.
Yeah. What was it? Oh yeah, and there are different, like, when you go to the different songs on Genius, they have like different pictures, and it's like you see a red one and a blue one and a yellow one. Yeah.
Oh, well, then there we go. And the album is very, it's got the yellow bird and the yellow dress, and it's honey. So yeah. Mm-hmm. And violet is a shade of blue. So. Yeah.
She said, her red bottom's covered in the blood of fuckboys on the soles of her primrose pumps. You find the soul of two pump chumps who refuse to kick rocks in some beat up trucks, so let her put her feet up, cuz she ain't playing with you.
Man, that line alone is like a better interpretation of the couple lines in Bodak Yellow.
Yeah, I was thinking the exact same thing.
It's expressed in way better detail, but essentially means the same thing.
Yeah, it's like don't fuck with her, man. You know?
If she ain't talking with you, it means she don't fuck with you.
But I love how it's like it's never framed as like judging her. You know what I mean? It's never this snotty. No, you remember that one song on that Tribe Called Quest album that we reviewed, and it was like, don't mess with her, she's a train wreck. And it was like, this girl won't give you the time of day, she's a train wreck. And it's just like, what? Why? It's like, cause she won't mess with you? Like, I don't know, like, they're not helping me characterize why I'm supposed to not like this girl, other than, oh, look at her, she's all snotty because she doesn't want to have sex with you specifically. It's like, okay, that doesn't... Like, why? It didn't give me sufficient reason to not like this person. You know what I'm saying? So it just came off like, you're just being a douchebag right now. You know? And so this song felt a lot more humanizing for just a female character, especially having been written by guys, you know? And it was just very interesting. It was like, huh, that's interesting. Like, because usually there's sort of like weird, dare I say the word, problematic element in the way, like, sort of rappers write women 99.9% of the time, even the quote-unquote conscious rappers. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, this person's a good girl, she da-da-da, or oh, she's a slut, da-da-da-da. No, but this is just sort of like, yeah, she has her sexuality, don't fuck with her, she's not talking to you, but, she has this one guy that she's interested in, and she takes it there with him. You know what I mean? And it's not framed as, like, she's my woman, because that's usually what they do. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like, here's this person independent from me that I just want to tell you about. It was just kind of like, huh, we don't really get that perspective from, like, a male rapper centralizing this, woman's point of view. So, yeah, I just thought that was kind of cool. But I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's some way I'm just not seeing. But it felt legit to me. It felt, what's the word? It felt like genuine, the way that they were trying to tell this woman's story, or these women's stories. And then you have, songs that, so yeah, it's sort of a two-parter. Like, you have parts about revolution, and then it's sort of, it sort of is talking about, just like the experiences of these certain women. And then at the end, it's sort of, the Earth to Venus kind of makes it about black music. And then I was thinking, like, oh, was it supposed to be like this woman is the development of black music? You know what I'm saying? Like a metaphor like that. But yeah, it's really cool. I think this is a really solid album. I would give it a 5 out of 5. I'm glad as fuck that CunninLynguists, like, I don't know, you just feel good when, like, one of your favorite artists growing up is, like, still doing their thing. You're like, yeah, I picked the right horse, like, I backed the right horse on this one. You know what I'm saying?
And they didn't lose, they didn't lose any steps either. Like, they're still coming with the same force. Time hasn't taken a toll on them. Like you said before, they grew up, so to speak,
Yeah.
That, it's still solid. It's still a great album. And yeah, it's nice to see them doing their thing. Even if it's like, oh yeah, shit. CunninLynguists, when we were trying to pick an album to review for the show, I was surprised to see that name, because they haven't put out anything since we had started this podcast, in that whole time. So seeing that name pop up was like, oh shit. Thank you very much for checking out this week's episode of the Going Off podcast, and thank you again to Open Mike Eagle for taking his time out of his oh-so-busy day. Dude's got a lot of shit going on right now, to sit down and speak with us about his new album, his tour, his Comedy Central show, all that other shit going on. We wish him the best of success and hope that we could possibly talk to him again in the future. Had a lot of fun talking about some nerdy shit and his music. It was great to be able to finally ask him those questions. If this is your first time listening to the Going Off podcast, all of our old episodes are in SoundCloud and on iTunes. Also, YouTube, which is probably where you're listening to this. If you want to catch up on the old episodes, they're all there, so you can play catch up. I've seen some few people say they've just made a weekend out of listening to the episodes trying to catch up, and if that's how you want to fucking spend your weekend, I'm not going to tell you now. But we also have stickers available on Redbubble. I'll put that link in the description also. And I guess that about covers all there really is to say this week. I guess until the following week, until next week, for the Going Off podcast, I'm Muse.
And I'm Rap Critic. I'm in great pain!